To the special meeting of the Bothell City Council for June 3rd, 2016. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All council members are here. We do have on our agenda an executive session, but I don't believe that we need one unless somebody feels like they need to have an executive session. All council members okay with that? We have just a brief presentation from the acting city manager.
Good morning, Mayor, council members, and thank you for being here early on a Friday morning. In November of 2015, November of last year, the council passed a revised code of ethics. And in that code of ethics, it provides for the appointment and confirmation of an ethics officer. And I'll go ahead and read from the Municipal Code Section 2.13.060, which states that the city manager will interview and choose the ethics officer subject to confirmation by the city council. It also states that the ethics officer shall be admitted to the practice of law and shall have sufficient experience and training. The code also states that the person must be under contract, in other words, not an employee of the city, and shall act as legal counsel for the city under the direction of the city attorney for administrative purposes, but shall perform the duties specified in this code independently and free of interference from city staff and officials. Now, the importance of doing this now is because we have not, before this point, since November when the code was passed, designated an ethics officer. And we need to act soon because we've actually received an ethics complaint and there are some timelines involved. So the Associate City Attorney, Paul Byrne, and I have interviewed Mr. Wayne Tanaka of Ogden, Murphy, and Wallace regarding the position of ethics officer. And Mr. Tanaka's qualifications include the following. He is admitted to the practice of law in Washington. He's served over 30 years as a city attorney for various jurisdictions. He's drafted and reviewed ethics codes for many jurisdictions. He's served as legal counsel for an ethics commission for the city of Langley here in Washington. He's served as past chair of his firm's municipal practice area, and as a lead attorney, he is now for the full range of projects associated with municipal clients, including land use decisions, growth management, municipal financing, personnel matters, public records, and open public meetings. He also represents municipal clients on a variety of other matters, such as shoreline management, local improvement districts, civil service, and tort litigation. Mr. Tanaka has served as president, and he serves on the board of the Washington State Association of Municipal Attorneys, and he's served 3 terms on the Bellevue School District Board of Directors. So I'm here this morning to tell you that Mr. Tanaka has indicated his willingness to accept this position. I've appointed him, and subject to your confirmation here and now, if you're inclined to do so. And that would require only a motion and a second and a vote.
Great, thank you. Just real quick, is there any history between the city and Mr. Wanaka or any council? I'm sorry, Tanaka. Yeah. Is there any history between him and the city or any council members? As
I mentioned, he works for Ogden, Murphy, and Wallace, and they have actually represented the city before. I think in one specific case that he worked on was a request by AT&T to recover, I don't know what fees they were recovering. Right. So he has actually worked in representing the city, but I believe that was prior to 1999, so that goes back a ways.
Okay. And just to confirm around the dais, does anybody have any history with Mr. Tanaka? No? Okay. All right, thank you. Appreciate it. So, motion to be in order. Deputy Mayor?
Are we going to have questions at all?
Sure, if you'd like to ask a question.
Okay, great. City Manager, was Mr. Tanaka your first choice?
Mr. Tanaka was one of 4 people that we looked at, and we interviewed 2 of them, and we selected one person. And now we've selected this person who is at this point, are my appointment, my nominee to.
Who is the first person that you chose to be as your nominee?
It was Mr. Peter Eglick.
Okay. Can you tell us how you've come to a place to change to be with Mr. Tanaka?
Well, the sense is, my sense is that there's a feeling that among the council members that maybe Mr. Tanaka is better qualified.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I take issue because as I understand, Mr. Tanaka is not the first choice of the city manager. And I think it is an awkward position right now, especially since there is an ethics complaint going on, that there are 5 members of council that are involved in the ethics complaint I actually think should be recusing themselves from this process. I think it is a conflict of interest to have an ethics complaint going forward, to have the first choice be not the first choice today, and a new nomination going forward. So I would ask the city council, who is on this ethics complaint, to speak to that and how they think they should be able to be sitting here and voting on this matter today.
Oh, you do? You want to answer? Okay, go ahead. Councilmember Sandberg.
I will not be recusing myself. The city manager had 4 candidates, and the candidate that he is presenting to us today is a highly qualified person who has no affiliation with any council member and no recent affiliation with the city of Bothell in general, except for prior to 1999. So I think that he is an excellent choice to provide the kind of unbiased, objective investigation that we're looking for. I had a discomfort with the initial appointment, which was Peter Eglick, because of his previous history with the city. And there was a discomfort in the executive session that then was validated after that meeting, because on social media, there was an individual who posted knowledge of this choice of Peter Eglick prior to myself, and I would imagine other council members, even knowing who the first choice was. So I was very troubled that somebody from the community would have known the selection of Peter Eglick before we as a council had even been briefed on that decision. So I was uncomfortable about his selection in our executive session, and then to come out and find out that it had already been leaked somehow to the public just validated that even further. And so I am very interested in having an open, objective process, and I don't feel Peter Eglick is the person to do that. And I feel that Mr. Tanaka, with all of the qualifications that the city manager has presented to us, is an excellent choice. And if there is somebody else that you would not like, if you do not want Mr. Tanaka, then Councilmember Freed, I think that you are welcome to lobby the council to ask him to interview the other 2 remaining candidates. But for me, this is not a conflict of interest. I do not know this man. And as members of the public have said, it seems awkward that we would pick the ethics officer. We are not picking an ethics officer. We are confirming a choice by the city manager. And this is a code that was approved by the prior city council. So we are following code and picking a great candidate. But if you would like the city manager to interview somebody else, I'd be willing to hear your argument.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion on the Deputy Mayor?
I also saw the Facebook post, and I'm uncomfortable knowing that someone in the community knew before I did who the potential appointment was. And again, it just confirms my concerns that I expressed earlier in executive session.
Councilmember McNeil?
So I have not seen the Facebook post, but I am a little concerned because being out in the community, We've heard issues with the process of investigations previously. I did send Peter, the acting city manager, a list of questions and concerns that I've heard from our community, and I think some of which is being confirmed right now. But the most important thing is that we have an open and transparent process. And it is my understanding that you actually do the appointment. All we are doing is confirming. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so the questions that I had sent you previously had to do with relationships, both public and private, with your appointment to, have they had a public or private relationship with council members, staff, both present or future or past? Has that been confirmed or?
I think the mayor just asked all of you if any of you know or have a relationship with Mr. Tanaka, and you all indicated that you don't. And I've answered the question about past relationship with the city in terms of his firm, which has represented the city. And he specifically has worked on a case, at least one case that I know of, where he did help represent the city.
Thank you. And I think that is probably single-handedly the most important thing, is to make sure the community knows that this process is being presented open and transparent, and that we're looking at any past and present relationships that could taint and make sure that it's an unbiased approach. So thank you.
Anybody else like to? Nope.
May
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Burns have a comment?
Sure. You might have to come up to the podium.
So one additional layer of protection is that any attorney, when they take on representation, they have to do a conflict check to see if there's prior representation that would interfere with the current representation. Mr. Tanaka and his firm are in the process of doing a background check. You guys are all public figures, and so Mr. Tanaka was able to access your names. They're running a conflict check within their entire firm to see if their firm has had any prior contact with any of you. If so, they're going to look into whether or not that creates a conflict. If not, then he's free to represent us. So there is that third layer of protection in terms of his own ethical duties to not represent the city if he has a conflict.
Thanks, Paul.
Great. Deputy Mayor.
I make a motion to confirm the ethics officer put forth by the acting city manager.
We have a motion, Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilmember Agnew, to confirm the recommendation by the acting city manager. Any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Spivey.
Great, thank you. I will be abstaining from this vote. Wednesday, when I contacted the city manager about the acting city manager about noon to talk about that evening's meeting, I asked him who he had selected for confirmation, and he indicated to me that it was Peter Eglick. Our ethics ordinance is to create an air of transparency and openness with the public, and we had presented to us this acting city manager's appointee for confirmation, and I'm not at liberty to discuss how we got to where we are today, but we never took a confirmation vote, and it took a public confirmation vote to one way or the other. I'm not saying that there was no vote taken behind closed doors, but we got to a point where we have a second appointee, and we never did anything publicly to indicate how we got there. So I think the intent of our ethics ordinance is to be open and public, and yet when we're selecting our ethics officer, I don't think we've been as open and public. I think the whole discussion should have been happening out here at the dais, much like it is today. We didn't do that. So I believe that our process in selecting our ethics officer has been not as transparent as it should be, and as a result, I will be abstaining from this vote.
Councilmember Freed.
Great. I, too, have an issue with this. The first nomination, as we've heard today, was actually Peter Eglick. Strangely enough, he's actually the gentleman who did the ethics investigation on me. Last year, when everything came to the forefront or whatever in February, the city manager was asked to go find basically the ethics officer to do an investigation. The council didn't have a say who that person would be, which I think is more of an appropriate process. That person went forward, and obviously everybody knows the results. Some people may not be happy that I was absolved of all wrongdoing, but that's how it was. He did a very thorough process. I think actually took 30 days or more just to do all his investigations to make sure it was clear. What I'm uncomfortable with certainly is somebody who is recommended by the WCIA, who has a stellar record. He also, is my voice repeating out there? That's very odd. All right. And also, I believe he represented the ACLU, so he has a stellar recommendation from them as well, and has a good reputation throughout the state of Washington. So that was your first recommendation. I think a decision actually was made because obviously we're out here with a different name, and Peter Eglick, who was the first choice, is not the one that's being presented today. And part of the whole thing with the Wayne Golf Course is people were concerned that a decision had happened behind closed doors. And as the city has stated, no decision was actually made in that. It was just a non-decision. In this, it seems like a decision was made behind closed doors without any public input to this point. So just for clarity, I did not release or share Peter Eglick's name with anybody in the public. This is the first time that I'm saying his name from the dais at this point. So I will not be supporting this nomination. I actually would like to make an amending motion to nominate Peter Eglick as the first choice of the city manager.
Second.
So your motion is out of order. The municipal code's clear that the city manager has to make a nomination, and we confirm that nomination. And you don't have the authority from the dais to appoint somebody as the ethics officer.
Okay, so what the issue that is very uncomfortable then is there was a nomination that was made, and I believe that if a decision was made to change that nomination inappropriately in executive session. So a nomination clearly was made. That nomination clearly was requested to change in that direction. If you'd like to ask the city
Mayor,
attorney,
may I
I'd
make a comment?
happy to have that happen.
Councilmember Sandberg.
I disagree with the assertion that what we did in executive session wasn't transparent. In fact, we've aired it all regarding the selection of the ethics officer right here on the dais without even waiving executive privilege first, but we did it anyway. We had both our acting city attorney, Scott Massal, and our assistant city attorney, Paul Byrne, in that meeting the entire time. We over and over again had conversations with them specifically asking this, and he told us repeatedly, you can discuss qualifications, but we are not coming into decision in here. And what happened in that room was I expressed a feeling about my concern about his qualifications and previous history with the city. Okay, no decision was taken. And if there had been a decision that was taken, I'm sure 2 of our city attorneys would have told us otherwise, would have cautioned us. So your characterization of what happened in there is different from my understanding and what's different from the 2 city attorneys that were present.
I certainly would love to be able to
So
freely...
you have not been recognized by the chair?
Actually,
Are you done with the floor, Councilmember Sandberg?
I was speaking and you took the floor from me, to be clear.
No, I'm not done with the floor, but I would like to know from our,
of order.
acting city attorney
Point of order, Mayor.
if
State your,
the amending motion is out of order.
can you yield? What's your point of order?
We are in discussion on a motion on the floor, and any other talk would be inappropriate at this time.
Aren't we
Point of
you don't feel
order.
like we're discussing the motion?
Well, at this point, generally, as it's always been, is when you have a motion and a second and you ask for discussion, you're speaking to your stance on the motion. That's the discussion. We're way beyond that at this point.
Well, point of order, I would like the city attorney to address whether this is a motion that is in order, this amending motion.
The Bothell Municipal Code gives the power to appoint the ethics officer solely to the city manager. So it is ultimately Peter Troedson's decision as to which name he puts forward. So I unfortunately do not think that an amending motion changing Peter's nomination would be appropriate from the dais.
That's why I called it out of order. Thank you.
I have a question then for the city attorney.
Yes, sir.
Can you use the protocol manual and you wait till you have my recognition to have the floor? Do you understand that we have a protocol manual? Do you want a copy of it? Do you have a copy of it?
You want to control yourself and act
No.
professionally?
You need to understand that there's procedures to this meeting and you do not, or you're not above them. Everybody else follows them just fine. Okay? So we're going to disqualify the motion in the second from the amending motion and second from the floor, and we're back to the main motion. Is there any discussion on the main motion? Councilman Regney.
I'll be supporting the main motion. I think the citizens, and from what I understand from the citizens, felt that we needed to be more transparent. I think the gentleman that we're hiring will be transparent. He has not a lot of history with the city, whereas another gentleman had quite an extensive history with the city. I feel that the assistant city manager has done a fine job. I am in support of Mr. Tanaka being the ethics officer, and I look forward to working with him.
All right, and I see no other hands, so we have to do a voice vote. Just real quick, though, I'd like to say I do support the recommendation that's been, or I'd like to support your recommendation for who should be the ethics officer. I think it's unfortunate that we are appointing one when we should have done that back last year. But the situation is the situation. We only have 20 days to respond to an ethics violation that's filed, whether it's, doesn't matter the validity or not of the complaint. It's a matter of fact. It's in our municipal code. The purpose of having an ethics officer on duty, the code was intended so it was just there. So in the event this happened, not just because it happened, we need one now. We should have had one a long time ago. So the muddling of we're trying to control things is just absurd in my opinion. I think we're trying to do the right thing here. It's unfortunate that we have a pending ethics violation before us, but that's why we're here Friday morning to try to make sure we hold up the agreement that we put to the public and the municipal code that we have in place. So, any other comments? Okay, so all those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, or say aye as well? Aye. Aye, okay. All those opposed? All those that abstain? Abstain. Motion passes 5 in the positive and 2 Councilmember Spivey and Councilmember Freed abstaining. That's it. We have nothing else on our agenda.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to my abstention.
Go ahead.
I'm abstaining from, I believe this process was not conducted as it should be. We heard from the city manager, his first nomination, which was a formal nomination, was Peter Eglick. Obviously, a decision was made to change that nomination, which is what I'm calling as untransparent. I disagree with our city attorney that this was not the first nomination of our city manager. And so I think the process is suspect. And I wish that it was conducted a different way. And I really tried to encourage council at the prior meeting to actually have this discussion on the dais, because a lot of optics are important to the community at this point. And so that is the reason for my abstention. I think we should have followed a different process.
Okay, so is there anything for the good of the order?
Move to adjourn.
Moved by Councilmember Sandberg, seconded by Councilmember McNeil to adjourn. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. We're adjourned.